is the moment UFC fans around the world have been waiting for. It's time!
It is indeed time. Thank you very much for that information, that great introduction, Bruce Buffer. UFC fans around the world have indeed been waiting for this. I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know who's been waiting for this other than me. Welcome. This is the Shadowfire Promotions podcast, Front Row Ringside. We are live, as much as live as you can get from a podcast that's been pre-recorded, but I just like to say that. Anyway, this is New Year's Eve 2015. We are we're on the cusp of 2016. And even though there hasn't really been lots and lots of wrestling or mixed martial arts news, there has been some stuff. There's been some great stuff that's happened over the last several months since our last podcast. And it really hasn't been months. It's been about a month. Anyway, my name is Greg Dennis. I am the president of Shadowfire Promotions, your Chicago source for wrestling, where mixed martial arts and professional wrestling distribution, media and memorabilia distribution company. So this is the last podcast of 2015, and what we're doing, we're having kind of a little recap here of what 2015 has been like in pro wrestling and mixed martial arts. It has been a very interesting time in both wrestling and mixed martial arts. There's been so much going on. There's when you're talking about the whole year of 2015, there's been just so much going on with the year. We're going to start off in pro wrestling. We're going to start off with the unfortunate passings in pro wrestling. From as far as I have them. There probably are some people I've missed, and if I missed them, please send them to us at podcast at SFP, like Sierra Foxtrot Papa, INCChicago.com. Anything podcast related, send it to that email. Additions, corrections, grouses, what have you. Send them to us at that email address, and we'll make sure to go and address them later on. Anyway, in pro wrestling, we have the passings of Perro Agoya Jr., who unfortunately died in the ring, a terrible accident where apparently the lights were on and no one was home. He suffered an accident in the ring and just never recovered. Not the first wrestler ever to die in the ring, probably won't be the last. But a terrible loss nonetheless. We had Vern Gagne in April. Let me kind of backtrack for a second. Perro Agoya Jr. died in March 21st. And so he died in the ring, like I say, a terrible in-ring accident. And that was March the 31st, or excuse me, my bad. March the 21st, at age 35. Then the next one in pro wrestling was Vern Gagne, the former promoter and owner, well, pretty much the same thing in the end, of the American Wrestling Association, the AWA. And Vern Gagne was not really a surprise passing. He had been suffering from Alzheimer's or dementia for quite some time. He was involved in an incident in 2009 where he had accidentally killed someone in his nursing home when he either body slammed him or something. It's not quite sure, but he put him in some kind of wrestling hold. He just kind of instinctively did that, and unfortunately the other resident of the nursing home did pass away. Gagne wasn't charged because of his dementia, but he had Alzheimer's, or potentially, they said, potential for chronic traumatic encephalitis, CTE, because of his passing, because of, potentially for head injuries. but Vern had passed away on April 27th at the age of 89. Then in, let's see, in June, we had Tommy Rogers, who is part of the Fantastics with his longtime tag team partner Bobby Fulton, and he died June 1st in his home in Hawaii at age 54. He had just recently been on Stone Cold Steve Austin's podcast, The Steve Austin Show. He like, I don't know, not far after, I remember listening to the podcast, and he talked about the various injuries he had from wrestling, how he had, it took him like half an hour to get up in the morning, and he had to go and soak for an hour in a tub just to be able to move. And I think he said he was working in a warehouse right now. He didn't want to mention where it was, but it's a popular retail chain, and said that he had been found dead in his home in Hawaii. There has not been a date of death for Tommy Rogers, but he died at age 54. So, terrible passing there, because we don't know, what happened, if it was something with his injuries or something else. Next was Dusty Rhodes, and he died in June 11th. So 10 days following Tommy Rogers, Dusty Rhodes passed away. Dusty, and the definite outpouring of support for him. He had been on WWE television not terribly long ago, supporting his sons Dustin and Cody, Goldust and Stardust. He had done work behind the scenes for WWE. He had done stuff for the developmental brand NXT. He had done stuff for just all sorts of promotions across the years. He was the head matchmaker for a long time for Jim Crockett Promotions, World Championship Wrestling. He had competed in his own federation, Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling. After his retirement, he had done all sorts of independent promotions, so he was one of the best talkers of all times in pro wrestling. Well known for such promos as Common Man, the Common Man promo, which if you look at our podcast from around that time, you'll hear the Common Man promo that he was famed for. That's out there and available. You can find it. But a huge loss to pro wrestling with Dusty Rhodes. Apparently, my understanding is that Dusty had fallen, or he was ill and had lost a lot of weight recently, and had said that that he had lost a lot of weight, and he said he wanted to lose weight, but apparently some people saw him and he didn't look well, not losing weight, not in a good way, and allegedly Dusty had died of stomach cancer. I'm trying to find a source for that. I think that Slam Wrestling in Canada had said something along those lines, but I am not 100% sure if he did indeed develop stomach cancer. Dusty was the kind of guy who he's not really going to tell you what's going on. If he's ill or something, he's just not going to tell you, because Dusty was the kind of guy who's, just doesn't want you to, worry about him. But apparently the Wrestling Observer had said he had a fall, and they had said that his kidneys were shutting down, he was dehydrated, so there was, and obviously with his weight, there was obviously an issue as he got older with that, but allegedly he had passed of stomach cancer. So with Dusty, the thing about Dusty is that Dusty, because he's a Texan, even he's from the South, Dusty had said there's two, in one of his promos he said there's two bad people. One of them's John Wayne and the other's me. And, so Dusty, when he passed on June 11th, it was sort of an ironic thing that he liked John Wayne, and that John Wayne had died June 11th of 1979 of stomach cancer, and Dusty would pass away 36 years later to the day for that very same reason. So that's another loss of a great talent in this business. So we have Dusty, and then we have the next one up was Buddy Landel, and Buddy was a major fixture in some of the Southern promotions, and he, by his own admission, he was kind of a guy, nature boy, Buddy Landel. He was groomed to be the next guy. He was groomed to win the heavyweight championship from Ric Flair, so that's where he kind of got that gimmick from. He got it from Rick, who of course got it from the original Nature Boy, Buddy Rogers. So, he had a lot of drug and alcohol problems and such. He admitted he had a lot of stuff wrong, and he said he had some government problems with the IRS, and Jim Crockett had helped him out, the promoter of the NWA Mid-Atlantic Territory. Had helped him out, and once Buddy had retired from the ring, he never really retired truthfully, but once he kind of sort of retired, he never was really a full-time wrestler. He had done a lot of stuff, but it never really was with the major promotions. But like a lot of guys, he ended up being forgiven quite a lot. Because he was just so incredibly talented. He said that he was a reserve police officer. He's married for over 34 years, which is terrific because wrestling is kind of a business that eats up marriages, so it's terrific that he's married for so long. He was involved in a car crash the day before he passed, and it said he went home. He felt fine. He went home. And then the next day he had died. His wife found him dead, so no one's really sure what the cause of death was with Buddy Landel. But again, another great talent in the ring that has passed away. In June is kind of a bad, sort of a bad summer, if you will. Because right around that same time, on June the 21st, we had Cora Combs, who had passed away at age 92. And Cora at 92 was certainly not the youngest. I mean, she was 92, so there's not a lot left for her at that age. She lived to a very nice, ripe old age, which is great. She had spent 40 years in the ring. She trained her daughter, Debbie. She was in the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. It was revealed that Cora Combs had pneumonia the week before she died, so she might have died of complications from pneumonia at that age. It's a lot of problems with illnesses. She was trained by Billy Wolf and was the last of the Billy Wolf trainees. Billy Wolf trained a lot of the early women right around Cora's age for the ring, and it being the time that it was, a lot of them ended up having to sleep with Billy Wolf, which didn't necessarily thrill the living daylights out of Wolf's wife, who was also a wrestler, Mildred Burke, who passed away way back in 1989, but his reputation for sleeping with his talent didn't really do him any favors with his wife. We managed to get spared for almost a full month until Rowdy Piper, the namesake for Rowdy Ronda Rousey of Ultimate Fighting Championship fame, Roddy had passed away July 31st in his sleep, like a lot of other wrestlers. Roddy was very, very young, only 61. He had admitted a long time ago, he said, you know what, I'm not going to be shocked if I don't, make 65. He said he's had poor health, he's had cancer, he's done drugs and steroids and then all that, and he said, I've made a lot of mistakes. He wished he had saved more of his money, but Roddy was one of those guys, much like Hulk Hogan, who just eclipsed pro wrestling. You talk about Roddy Piper, and a lot of people, yeah, Roddy Piper, I know Roddy Piper, he was in this movie and that movie. Roddy's famous line from They Live, I've come here to chew bubble gum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubble gum. There's all sorts of great movies and that the Piper done, and Piper certainly was considered a much better actor than Hulk Hogan. Not that that's really a difficult thing to do, since Hogan is not really the great actor. He's good at playing variations of himself, but he's not really good at anything else. But Roddy was great talent, great talker. He was one of the first wrestlers to get a talk show style segment with his Piper's Pit, where he would go and basically, when it started off when he was injured, in the WWF, the World Wrestling Federation at that time, and they said, give me time and a microphone, and I'll talk them into the building. And so one of his famous things is Piper's Pit. Probably two of his most famous are when he beat up preliminary wrestler Frank Williams, and Williams says, well, I may not win a lot, but I always try real hard. And Piper mocked him for not winning many matches and not being as successful, and then he basically picked a fight with him and whooped his butt. And then when he had the Piper's Pit with Jimmy Snuka, the famous and memorable coconut incident, where it says, oh, you want to be a big shot? Here you go. I got a tree for you to climb. Here's a coconut. And when Snuka started getting upset, Piper just took a coconut and slammed him in the head with it. And it was a great, great segment that many people remember. So after Piper's death in July, we kind of got a break all the way to November, where we were faced with the passing of Nick Bockwinkel, the former American Wrestling Association champion. Many, many times he was a champion of the AWA. And he also, if I remember correctly, he also had dementia. If I'm reading up real quick here. It said he died of undisclosed causes, but he did have some heart problems. He underwent triple bypass in 2007, and also in 2007 he was elected the president of the Cauliflower Alley Club, which is a non-profit fraternal organization for people in the wrestling and fighting and boxing business. Mostly wrestling, but there's a lot of boxers that are involved and mixed martial arts fighters. Here it is. Ric Flair had mentioned in 2013 that Bockwinkel had Alzheimer's, but Nick's wife had said that Nick did have some health issues, but he chose to keep them private. And in August, Nick stepped down from his position as the president, and he was replaced by Brian Blair. And at the Bologna Blowout, which is the big luncheon at the Cauliflower Alley Club, at the reunion, which just took place the 50th, I think. I'm going to check. I thought there was a 50th I attended. But his wife said he was making his final public appearance due to health issues, and the Bologna Blowout was renamed the Bockwinkel Blowout. And if you haven't been to the Cauliflower Alley Club, you should, because it is a wonderful, wonderful time of going and meeting all sorts of people in the wrestling business, people you might have grown up on, for us, it generated some good business. So it was a really great time at the Cauliflower Alley Club. Unfortunately, there's always going to be times where you don't always see everybody because of illnesses such as that, such as Nick Bockwinkel. So for someone who, if you were a fan of the 70s and early 80s of the AWA and you're familiar with Nick Bockwinkel, you're obviously lost a chance to meet him. And for me personally, I didn't always get out to the reunions. I've been a member for many, many years, but I never always got out to the reunions until I found a time when the time and the money were both at the right place at the right time. And I went out, and it was a wonderful experience, and I hope to continue to go to these things. Nick Bockwinkel always kind of appeared in a sport that was kind of full of brutes. Bockwinkel always kind of appeared as a gentleman. He was kind of considered very literate, so he liked to go and use big words to further aggravate the fans, and just a great, great talent. Another guy who could just really talk his way into the building, although he was a superb athlete as well. So we don't even, now it starts picking up again. Tommy Gilbert, the father of Eddie Gilbert and Doug Gilbert, died in Tennessee, his home in Tennessee, at age 75. No cause of death is listed for that, but Doug Gilbert lists on his Twitter account that his father passed early this morning, and that was November the 26th. And Tommy Gilbert, he's one of those guys, didn't win a lot of championships, but was definitely a top-tier kind of wrestler. And of course, his sons, Eddie Gilbert and Doug Gilbert, both fought him in. And Tommy Gilbert, Eddie Gilbert is, of course, Thomas Edward Gilbert Jr., but he always went by Eddie. And he had competed until he had passed in 1993, I believe it was. And then in the beginning of December, Extreme Championship Wrestling mainstay Hack Myers passed away, and it was, he had surgery, brain surgery. He was 2 days away from his 42nd birthday. He had brain surgery at Johns Hopkins Hospital. Axel Rodden had mentioned that he was undergoing this surgery. This surgery was on November 15, according to the tweet from Axel. Hack mostly competed in ECW, but he did some work in Independence, the northeastern part of the Independence, from his debut in 1990, and he didn't really do a whole lot after the close of Extreme Championship Wrestling, but it was said that he had trained a couple of guys. He had trained Scoot Andrews and Travis Tomko. Tomko, of course, most people remember from his time in the World Wrestling Federation, WWE. He had also competed in Total Nonstop Action Wrestling. It doesn't really say what the brain surgery was for. There's a presumption with what ECW was that perhaps this brain surgery is something to alleviate pressure, maybe something dealing with some of the chair shots or other stiff shots that ECW was famous for. Concussions, just wrestling-related concussions. But, shame he died 2 days before his 42nd birthday. And then we go international again, where we have Lismark, Sr., not the Junior. You remember Junior from World Championship Wrestling towards later years. And Lismark was famous for his blue and white mask that, if I recall, I do not believe he ever had to take off his mask in a match. But Lismark had some issues towards the turn of the century, around 1999. He still wrestled, but he didn't wrestle quite as frequently, and he had stated he was going to retire soon, and that was in 2008, even though he'd been having some health problems apparently since late 1990s. And he had passed away on December the 16th of respiratory failure. Again, not a good time in pro wrestling, but we've also had two high-profile deaths in mixed martial arts. We've also had these are guys who competed way in the early days, so they might not necessarily be remembered because they appeared way early, way before the original UFC, long before Dana White and Zuffa and all that. They were in the original incarnation of the UFC where there truly were no holds barred. First we had Kevin Rozier, and he was a kickboxer, a boxer. He's trained for 5 weeks. He won his first fight against Zane Frazier, karate expert, but then he went and fell to Gerard Gordeau in the semifinals. And it was said that Kevin Rozier had issues with his weight. He had several serious illnesses, and he had an open heart surgery, and he had also had a fall while he was in intensive care, and he had died of a heart attack on April the 14th of 2015. We also had, at the end of the year, we had Emmanuel Yarbrough, who most people, like Kevin Rozier, a lot of people don't remember Emmanuel. Emmanuel had competed, I think, in 6 mixed martial arts fights. His probably most famous fight occurred at UFC 3, Ultimate Fighting Championship Part 3, if I'm not mistaken. He was a sumo fighter, mainly sumo. He was possibly considered one of the heaviest men, one of the heaviest athletes ever. At some point they said he had weighed something like 600 or 800 pounds or something. Wikipedia has him at 600 pounds. I think it said that he had weighed as much as 882. He held the Guinness World Record for the world's heaviest living athletes. He is one of the most famous sumos outside of Japan. He was 6'8". He had fought in 3 fights and had a 1-2 record. And the first fight he had for the Ultimate Fighting Championship, he had lost in UFC 3 to Keith Hackney, who was later called the Giant Killer. And he was called the Giant Killer because he had taken down Yarbrough. Emmanuel had just incredible strength, a lot like Terry Gordy, just incredible strength. He shoved Hackney into the cage, and Hackney actually fell out of the cage, and he used his size to kind of bully around Keith Hackney, trying to splat himself on top of Hackney. But Hackney had got up and then landed a series of punches, and he kept on going with the punches until he had forced Yarbrough to submit to punches. Hackney, unfortunately, had to withdraw because he broke his fist, and then Yarbrough, of course, had lost, but Yarbrough broke his hand because he kept putting his hand up to block Hackney's punches. And this is before they started having a lot of rules in mixed martial arts. So, he was punching him to the head, to the back of the head, to the neck. Anything went in these early days of the Ultimate Fighting Championship. So you see the fight. It's kind of brutal when you look at it with today's eyes. If you look at it like the current UFC and the current rules they have, it'd be a pretty brutal fight. So that is our passages, if you will, for 2015 in mixed martial arts and pro wrestling as we continue our look back over the last year here, 2015. So we're going to kind of go and touch on a little bit of military and a little bit of wrestling, a little bit of mixed martial arts here. Kind of recap the news here. We've gone 30 minutes, which is pretty shocking. I didn't think we'd last this long, but for 2015, I think the biggest story in mixed martial arts of 2015, we had the rise of Ronda Rousey, and we also had the fall of Ronda Rousey, as Ronda was injured very, very badly in her fight with Holly Holm. Like barely a month ago, I think at this point, Ronda had her jaw broken, was defeated very badly by by Holm. And I don't think anyone had anticipated that happening. Ronda had such an aura of dominance in the women's bantamweight division that I don't think anyone really expected that to happen. Not just a defeat, but such a thorough defeat. But Ronda, most people admit that Ronda had some holes in her game. She was not used to fighting someone that had both boxing and kicking skills. She could box, but she couldn't kick. And there was, someone who could do both she had troubles with. Ronda, unfortunately, for all of her dominance, Ronda really didn't have the greatest skills in the world. But in all fairness, neither did Brock Lesnar when Brock was on top of the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championship. So I think that if we look a little forward to 2016, I think we're going to see that Ronda would hopefully come back better than ever, because I think Ronda's mentality is that, she's going to want to come back. She's going to want to come back. She's going to want to dominate again. She's going to want to fix up any perceived holes in her fighting game and come back better than ever. So I think mixed martial arts fans and women's mixed martial arts fans look forward to that. And other stuff with the UFC as we kind of traverse across 2015, I think we've seen a rise of women's mixed martial arts in general. I think that mixed martial arts is definitely on its way, and I think that we're going to see a lot more. We're going to see a lot more divisions. We're going to see a lot more women training for it. A lot more champions, all that stuff. So, I think we're going to see a lot more from mixed martial arts as we go through this new year, 2016. I can't really think of anything that comes to mind. This is probably the most free flow I've had of the podcast, where I don't really have notes in front of me that say, hey, talk about this or talk about that. They're just kind of free-flowing off my memories of 2015. There have been some great UFC shows over 2015, without a doubt, but I can't think off the top of my head of anything that really stood out like, wow, other than the Ronda Rousey loss. And it may be that I'm a fan of Ronda, but I'm quick kind of flipping through my notes here, see if there's anything in the Ultimate Fighting Championship notes that kind of have something going on that is very, very newsworthy with regard to that. But I don't really think so. We obviously, there's been a lot of stuff going on. Not sure necessarily, how much of this stuff was there. But anyhow, so that's kind of mixed martial arts events, I believe, as I kind of crawl through stuff here. In professional wrestling, we began the year in pro wrestling with the Authority coming back, the WWE's Authority, where they go and have Triple H and Stephanie McMahon as the evil owners of WWE that are out to go and just screw any fan favorite. And they had we had thought that temporarily that they might, be going away from that storyline and potentially doing something different, but unfortunately that was not something that came to be. Instead, what happened is right away after like maybe only 2 weeks or so, WWE had decided, hey, you know what? People have not seen enough of Triple H and Stephanie. So there needs to be more of us. So we cannot possibly have the Authority off TV forever, because who else would screw all the fan favorites in WWE except us? So, unfortunately, the Authority came back. Okay, so a quick check here, and yeah, there's nothing really ultra significant in terms of the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Again, WWE, we started off the year with Triple H and the Authority coming back because we couldn't live without them on TV, and the plummeting 2 weeks of ratings clearly showed that everyone wants to see Triple H and Stephanie McMahon go and screw every wrestler on television, figuratively. And the problem, which has been mentioned numerous times by people much better than me, is that you just can't do that, because for the rule breaker, it makes him look like he's completely ineffective. He has to run to mommy and daddy every time he wants to do something. And, so it's not really, the heat's not really coming to him for being a jerk. The heat's coming on Triple H and China, so they're kind of like a heat vacuum, if you will. So it's like, okay, the rule breaker doesn't get any heat or any hatred or anything for himself. It all goes to Triple H, and for the fan favorite, it makes him look ineffective because everything he does is quickly undercut, saying, oh, you won the championship? You know you didn't. I'm overturning it. Why? No reason. I just am. Because I can. And it's the same thing that's been hashed and rehashed so many times since 1998, when we first had Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Vince McMahon. And so every year since 1998, for the last, 15 years now, we have had, 15 plus, mind you, for the last 15 plus years now, we have had somehow the evil McMahon family doing their best to go on a line with the rule breakers and make sure that any of the fan favorites can't get ahead. And it's really ridiculous. It's a ridiculous storyline. It kills any sort of credibility anywhere. And WWE's ratings are clearly showing that no one cares. They wonder why they can't get, money on pay-per-view. They wonder why they can't get money anywhere else. They wonder why the ratings are slipping. It's because they're doing the same old formula since 1998. There has literally been no change whatsoever to any of the format, whether it's from a presentation of the show to how the talent is managed to anything else. You started 2015 with John Cena. 2015 is pretty much ending with John Cena, although WWE is trying desperately to find someone to put in the John Cena spot. But in typical WWE fashion, they only can focus on one guy, the top guy. Everyone else just, you're not relevant. You're not important. We've got to focus on one guy. We can only pay attention to one person at a time. That person has got to be John Cena. He sells all the merchandise. He's the only guy we pay attention to. Who cares about those other wrestlers we have on the roster? I mean, sports entertainers. Sorry, I cursed a minute there. Who cares about those other guys? There's John Cena. He's the only one we should ever pay attention to. And then when John Cena goes down, and John Cena's getting close to 40. He's like 37, 38 years old, and starting to feel the pressure in terms of the fact that he's getting close to 40, and he's been making been on top of the heat for a good long time, for about the last 10 years or so. So his body and his injuries are starting to catch up with him. And WWE says, wait a minute, you can't leave. We never built up anyone else. You're supposed to be here forever. And that's been a problem with WWE's for a long, long time, going back to 1984, where Vince McMahon, the owner, just absolutely refuses to push anyone except his top guy. So here's my top guy. He's the only one I care about. Everyone else is kind of secondary and not important. And then when their top guy goes down, whether it's a steroid trial or, a screw job or anything else, you don't have anyone else because you never bothered. And then you're saying, well, gee, I don't have anyone. What do I do? And in this case, they're trying to push Roman Reigns right to the top. And I don't think Roman Reigns is ready, and the fans certainly don't think that Roman Reigns is ready because the guy gets booed out of the building everywhere he goes. And, Roman Reigns has kind of proven that he's not ready in media interviews where he says, well, gee, I don't understand. People are bullying me by booing. They should just accept the fact that Vince McMahon has made me the top guy. I'm just doing my thing. I'm here to get rich, and everyone should just accept that I'm here to get rich and do my thing, and I'm going to do it my way, whatever way Vince McMahon wants me to do. But I'm here to get rich, and everyone should just love me and support me, and they're just bullying me. And it's like, okay, dude, you're like 6'6" and 280 pounds. Who the hell's bullying you? They're bullying you by booing you. There's been a lot of guys in wrestling thought of that had thin skin, but that's pretty rough right there. But it seems like they're kind of go hot and cold on Roman Reigns every so often, and based on if they see that maybe this is the time that people will accept him, but it's going to take a while. The Rock didn't get accepted right away. Lots of other guys didn't get accepted right away when they got, when it was clear that they were pushed and the fans didn't want that particular person to be pushed. There's no greater an example of that than someone who was established, Dave Bautista. Bautista came back to WWE to plug Guardians of the Galaxy. They were going to push him as a top guy, the top hero coming to WrestleMania, and fans didn't want him. They wanted Daniel Bryan to win. And so WWE had no choice but to put Daniel Bryan in the top spot. And even though, he was too short for WWE, and, he was goat-faced, and he wasn't huge, he didn't have muscles on top of muscles on top of muscles, he didn't look like a cartoon, he wasn't 6'5", and he wasn't 300 pounds of just muscles just ripping out of his skin, which is kind of the way that WWE likes their top guys to look, because they feel there's a certain way to present the wrestling product, and it's only their way. And that's another problem, that WWE just kind of refuses to ever change their ways. And as much as they say, we're here for the fans, we're here for you, you tell us what to do, not really. Because the fans clearly said they wanted Daniel Bryan, and they said, no, you don't want Daniel Bryan. Daniel Bryan, he's goat-faced, he's tiny, he's short. The guy's like, 6 foot? I mean, you got to be a star. You got to be like, Sid Justice. You got to be like 6'8", and you got to have huge muscles. He doesn't look at all like that. But it's for, whatever reason, the fans fell in love with Daniel Bryan, and WWE just did everything they could to tell you, no, you're stupid, you're dumb, you're an idiot. You should not like Daniel Bryan. We're telling you, you are wrong. Yeah, even though we say that the fans are right and we do this for fans, we listen, no, we're telling you you're wrong. You should love some other guy who's huge and big and jacked. You don't like him. And, of course, it completely backfired because the fans wanted Daniel Bryan. And speaking of Daniel Bryan, 2015 became the time when Daniel Bryan might, at the pinnacle of his career after winning the WWE Championship, might end up retiring from wrestling for good due to multiple concussions that he suffered in his career. So best wishes for speedy recoveries to him, because concussions are not really something you want to mess with. But yeah, it's a shame. It really is a shame in terms of Daniel Bryan, getting right up to the top of the heap, and then having to go down at what's probably the peak of his career. Also, we saw Randy Savage, the Macho Man, another very famous wrestling star from the 1980s, early 1990s. When he first kind of got his stardom, his famous WrestleMania 3 match with Ricky Steamboat. Randy, who had passed away a couple of years before, finally got into the WWE Hall of Fame. A lot of people feel it's because Vince McMahon was pressured on a live podcast with Steve Austin to do it. Randy's brother, Lanny Poffo, had said, well, Randy didn't really want to be inducted in the Hall of Fame unless the whole family could be inducted, which was himself, Lanny, Randy, and their father, Angelo Poffo, because when the WWE inducted the entire Von Erich family, Randy kind of felt that, hey, some of these guys didn't really do much. Mike had died before he hit his promise, and, Kerry kind of hit the top once, but wasn't really that great. And, Kevin, as good as he was in the ring, he's the last surviving brother, but he hasn't really done anything. Mike Von Erich had passed and didn't really do anything much at all. And the youngest one, Chris, never did anything. So, hey, if these guys can get in, why can't I? Why can't I put in my entire family? Certainly my dad and my brother have done enough to get in if the entire Von Erich family can get in. And so apparently that is what Randy had professed to his brother. He didn't want to go in unless he could get his entire family, and Vince McMahon pushed back against that. But when Randy did get in the Hall of Fame, Lanny said, well, you're going to do what you want, so just do it. Don't expect me to endorse your decision, but, I'm kind of out of it. I give you my blessing to do it. It's not something Randy would have wanted, but whatever kind of thing. So we saw Randy Savage in the Hall of Fame for the first time, and I think that was real popular among the fans. So unfortunately, it seems that looking forward to 2016, it seems that WWE is on the same course to do the same old, and kind of continue on with the exact same thing they did in 2015, which is the exact same thing they did in 2014. The only thing out of 2015 that seems different is that the WWE's developmental brand NXT seems to be doing quite well on the WWE Network. Although, in my opinion, it's wrong to have NXT fall into what I kind of consider the ECW trap, where ECW, the original promotion, was very different, and then when it was acquired by WWE, it quickly became, well, it's a WWE brand now, so everything has to be changed, so it has to be identical to every other WWE brand that we have. And I think that's what NXT is, where it's different for now, but, sooner or later it's going to be, they're traveling with it, and Triple H wants it to be just another WWE brand where, there's no difference between that and Raw and SmackDown, because, hey, it's a WWE thing. So I think it's wrong to have their developmental brand be this touring brand and to be just another brand in WWE, because the whole point of it is it's a developmental brand. It's where guys are trained in, doing promos and how to work and all this. Now, the flip side of that is that most of the people that are coming through NXT are guys who are experienced wrestlers. WWE keeps wanting to go and hire pop culture people, whether it's football players or basketball players or baseball players or soccer players or whatever, to be WWE superstars. And that's kind of their idea. Hey, this is going to teach you, A to Z how to be a wrestler, but they really haven't shown any promise in terms of taking guys from anything else to be a wrestler. The guys who have shown the most success have been guys who have experience. Ken Anderson, CM Punk, Prince Devitt, Kevin Owens, all these other guys. So WWE's desire is, hey, we don't want you to be a wrestler. We would rather have you as someone who's made their name somewhere else and came into wrestling, but they just cannot seem to do such. And their desire to turn NXT into this other touring brand, I think really kind of undercuts the idea of training people. But whatever. They're going to do what they want to, and the reality of it is they're not taking guys A to Z and training them to be a wrestler. They're taking guys who already are wrestlers and teaching them the WWE style, because everyone has to work and talk identically to the last guy. 2015, we had, also in wrestling, we had Bobby Fulton of the Fantastics. He circulated a petition on his Facebook page that he felt that the WWE Network should be banned because all the wrestlers on there from other promotions, whether it's World Championship Wrestling, Georgia Championship Wrestling, Mid-South, anywhere else, none of these guys are receiving any royalties. And he says, hey, WWE makes money off of this. We're not. And WWE's mentality is, well, hey, we bought it. We don't have to do anything. But, no one had ever signed any sort of agreement saying, hey, we're waiving royalties to anything. But he says, well, that's not, Vince McMahon says, that's not my problem. You should go back to the owner of the footage. Well, no, you are the owner of the footage. He'd say, no, go back to, Jim Crockett or George Sheffield, all those guys you need to talk to about royalties, not me. But no one has ever signed a WWE contract saying, hey, I consent to show this footage. Even movie stars and television actors, they're getting royalties off of stuff no matter how many times the production is sold to another person, another studio. They still make money off it. They're still getting royalties. Their contracts don't change. But, Vince McMahon and WWE feel, hey, we own the footage, so it's our right to use it as we want, and hey, whatever. But if he really wanted to do the right thing, he would go and say, hey, if he truly wants to be this global entertainment entity that he wants to be, and he wants to go and say, I'm not a pro wrestling promoter, because pro wrestling is a sleazy, dirty, fake sport. I'm an entertainer. I put on sports entertainment. I don't do anything with pro wrestling. Pro wrestling, that's sleazy. That's fake stuff. Those are shysters. They're hucksters. They're not me. I'm an entertainer. I'm a respected businessman. But if he really wanted to do that, he would go and find a way to pay all these guys that he's got the footage for. Because, he gets money off of this network, and these other people should be getting money off of this, and they're not. So let's see. WWE keeps getting more pay-per-view events or events on their WWE network. I do not know. I call it pay-per-view. I don't know what they call it. I think they still call it pay-per-views. But for whatever reason, they keep adding more events or replacing other events, and they keep saying, well, what's the name? Is the name important? Does the name sell the event? And honestly, the name doesn't sell the event. Maybe for the legacy events like Royal Rumble or WrestleMania, maybe, especially WrestleMania, even though Vince doesn't like the name because it has wrestling in it, and, he hates wrestling. But, it's not the name that matters, it's the event. That's when people are buying it, and by putting it at a price point of $9.99 and then showing it on the network, that's great, and they've done a lot of tweaks and changes to the network, but I still think that our business model here at Shadowfire Promotions is a better business model, because the Netflix business model is great, but only if we're showing it. So if you want to see, let's say, WrestleMania 1, well, WrestleMania 1 isn't showing this month. Well, I can't see it. Where am I going to find it? Well, you find it with us. You find it on video. You find it on DVD. And yes, a lot of wrestling fans, as well as mixed martial arts fans, still have VHS, because a lot of these things have never gone to DVD. To backtrack a little bit to VHS and the Ultimate Fighting Championship, we have the full, complete, original UFC run from 1 to 22, Ultimate 2, Ultimate Japan, Ultimate, Ultimate Brazil, Ultimate Shamrock, whatever the hell else was in that set. There's like 20, almost 30 videos in that set, VHS, because you're not going to find it on DVD, and it's $300 with free shipping in the United States, but you're not going to find the stuff. It's never been released DVD. Zuffa has the footage, but they certainly aren't, putting it out on DVD. And then we're going to shift back to wrestling and say, yeah, there's a lot of WWE events that don't necessarily exist on DVD. And there's plenty of stuff that's not on the WWE network. So you're only going to see this stuff when you get it from us, Shadowfire Promotions. You're going to order it from us at orders at sfpincchicago.com. That is SFP, like Shadowfire Promotions. So the WWE and their network continues doing good. I don't know how much real money it's making, but I mean, they're obviously surviving, and they have enough money to do stuff. And if the WWE wants to go the route they're going and say, hey, we want everything on the network, and we're going to take the money, take the programming off of the USA Network, then they're really going to lose money. They got some money from the USA Network, and they wanted more. I know it was said they wanted more. They didn't get everything they wanted, but they got some of it. But as far as the Hall of Fame itself, talking about the Hall of Fame, they kind of do their own thing with the Hall of Fame. A lot of people in the Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame in general, like most Hall of Fames, but in WWE more especially, because this is what we're talking about. The Hall of Fame is something generated to sell tickets, not necessarily be in a representation of who's the best talent in the world wrestling entertainment. We'll kind of see what happens with that. So that covers, I think, most of the wrestling stories of 2015. In the realm of entertainment, we lost a lot of great talent. We lost Ben E. King. We lost a couple others. We lost. I'm sorry, I'm blanking here a minute. Leslie Gore. We lost Louis Jourdain, who was in Swamp Thing and James Bond. He was in the Octopussy film, and yes, we have all the James Bond films available. Let's see, who else did we lose in 2015? I know not everyone is on my page. I know that, we just recently lost Natalie Cole, the singer, the daughter of Nat King Cole. I'm just having all sorts of trouble today. Must be my New Year's hangover, huh? Um, let's see, we lost. Um, we had lost in 2015. At the end of 2015, rather. We have lost Lemmy Kilmister of Motorhead. He died of cancer. He was 70. He died of aggressive cancer, as was described. Leonard Nimoy, who's most famous for playing Mr. Spock on Star Trek, original Star Trek. Terry Pratchett, the author of the Discworld series. Mike Porcaro, the bassist for the band Toto. Let's see, who else did we lose in 2015? That James Best, who played Roscoe P. Coltrane on the Dukes of Hazzard. He was also a great actor. Besides Roscoe, he had worked as an acting coach. He was a musician. He was a college professor. So he did a lot of things after his run on the Dukes. Back to singers, we had Percy Sledge, most famous for When a Man Loves a Woman. I mentioned earlier Ben E. King. Grace Lee Whitney died in May, and she was most famous for playing Yeoman Janice Rand in the original Star Trek. She passed in May at age 85 of natural causes. B.B. King, the great B.B. King, had passed away also in mid-May, and B.B. King had diabetes for many years. B.B. King had done commercials for diabetes remedies to go and take your blood and such like that, so probably not the biggest surprise there. But the great blues guitarist B.B. King died at age 89, and his real name was Riley King. He was called B.B. for Blues Boy, and then it was kind of just shortened down to B.B. later on. B.B. King was Blues Boy King, and then he kind of later on shortened it down to B.B. King. It was originally the Beale Street Blues Boy, and then it became Blues Boy and just B.B. And he was famous for having his guitar he called Lucille, and his guitar was called Lucille, and it's actually not as well known as I had thought it was, but all he used a Gibson ES-335 guitar, and he said that he had named the guitar Lucille. He actually had a song called Lucille. He talks about a guitar. It's included on the anthology album, the B.B. King anthology album, but he said that the guitar, he got the idea, the inspiration, if you will, in 1949. He was playing in Arkansas, and he said the hall was heated with a barrel full of kerosene that was lit on fire, and that was the way things were done back then. And he said during his performance, two guys fought, and they knocked over the barrel, and of course got all over, and there was a fire started. And B.B. King got outside the building and realized that he had left his guitar inside. And he went back inside. He rushed back inside this burning building to get his guitar. And he learned later on that the two guys who were fighting had died in that fire, and that they had been fighting over a woman, and it was a woman named Lucille. And after that, he named his guitar Lucille, and every other guitar he had ever owned since then, he had called Lucille. And it was always a reminder to him to never again, do something as stupid as run back into a burning building for a guitar, or to fight over a woman. So that's the origin of Lucille. Betsy Palmer, the actress Betsy Palmer, passed away. She had done a lot of stuff. She had done probably most famous for playing Jason Voorhees' mother in the Friday the 13th films, the early Friday the 13th films. But she had a long and prolific career, and she died at age 88. So She had died in a hospice center at that time. Sir Christopher Lee, everyone remembers him from his roles as Dracula. He had a very long and prolific career in just about every form of entertainment you can think of: television, movies, plays, radio. Just a very prolific actor, and Sir Christopher Lee had passed at age 93, and he had just done it all. He had written, played on stage. He was an author. He was a singer. So he had died of complications of heart failure and respiratory problems that had kind of happened for a while, but shortly after celebrating his 93rd birthday, so he lived quite a long life and an incredible talent. Film composer James Horner, he composed the score for Titanic. He's probably most famous for composing the score to Titanic. He had done a lot of work in a lot of feature films. He'd actually worked in the score for Star Trek II. He had done Avatar. He'd done a lot of work with James Cameron, but he had done just a lot of work with all sorts of different directors. James Cameron and Ron Howard are probably the two most famous names. He had done producers with John Landau and Steven Spielberg. He had worked with Barry Mann and Cynthia Weil. He had a very long and prolific career as well as a film composer, and he had passed in June 22nd. He had died in an airplane accident on an airplane that he was flying. So a great talent there was lost. Chris Squire of the band Yes. Chris Squire was the bassist for Yes. He was the one original remaining member of Yes. He was the only one to have visited across all the incarnations of Yes. He had appeared in all their studio albums, and this was the first when he was diagnosed with leukemia, which is what he would die of. He was the only one to appear in all their albums and in every single incarnation of Yes. And when he had left the final tour of Yes with his illness, it would have been the first ever tour that Squire had not appeared on. So he was very and of course very talented, being in the prog rock group. Quite a talented bassist. I know that we have the Bass Player magazine that is available for sale. That covered Chris Squire at death, and it taught how many bass players were influenced by Squire, which includes, surprisingly enough, Gene Simmons of Kiss, where you wouldn't think that Simmons would care for the progressive rock movement as much as he would for the straight rock and roll. Also in June, we had just after James Horner, we had Dick Van Patten, who was the star of Eight Is Enough, and most of them remember from Eight Is Enough, and Patrick McNee, who was in the original incarnation of the Avengers television show. Not anything to do with the Avengers movies or anything of Marvel Comics. This was a completely unrelated thing. Patrick McNee had also starred in Battlestar Galactica as Count Dibley. If you're a fan of sci-fi, you'll remember that. Omar Sharif, the Egyptian actor, had passed in July. We kind of got a little bit of a break from it depends on your idea of who is like a real celebrity. We're kind of focusing on people that would probably make the news. In August, Yvonne Craig had passed. She was best known as playing Batgirl in the original the original Batman series in 1966. So she had played Batgirl. She was also in the original Star Trek. She had played an Orion slave girl. If you've seen any of the original Star Trek, you see her every time in the closing credits. The dark-haired woman. She's all green, and there's kind of a funny story about the Orion aliens, because the Orions originally, when they filmed it, the film editors or whoever was not necessarily understand that the Orions were supposed to be green. So they thought it was some sort of color correction thing, and they went and painted the skin white. And then they got back to them, and of course Gene Roddenberry, the creator, felt, oh, this is wrong. Obviously it's not showing up properly on camera, so he painted them a different shade of green. And each time the editors had, recolored them to a flesh color. And each time the actresses were kind of complaining that each time the aliens, that the makeup was difficult to get off. And finally, it was, the Gene Roddenberry had a talk with them. I was like, oh, wait, you meant for them to be green? Gee, I'm sorry, kind of thing. So that was kind of a funny thing there. Wes Craven. Most everyone who's into horror films, especially Nightmare on Elm Street, knows Wes Craven, the screenwriter, the creator of the Freddy Krueger character, and he passed away on August the 30th. Dean Jones, a Disney actor from back in the day, did a lot of stuff with Disney for about 3 or 4 years. The Love Bug, he did a couple of more things, I believe. He played in Jailhouse Rock with Elvis Presley and a couple other things. But he did a lot of stuff with Disney. He played in a small role in Clear and Present Danger and the film Beethoven. So he's pretty famous if you're into that older actor, if you're familiar with it. Jackie Collins, and the author, the novelist. A lot of people are familiar with her books. A lot of them have been adapted into films. Moses Malone, the basketball player, and Yogi Berra, the former baseball player. Both of those individuals passed away in 2015. A lot of passings. And of course, as we kind of got towards the end of the year, we kind of got a little bit of a reprieve, if you will, but it kind of started right at the end of the year. Scott Weiland of Stone Temple Pilots passed away, followed quickly by Robert Loggia, who was famously spoofed in the Family Guy little segment where he had to spell his name, and as mentioned before, Lemmy of Motorhead. And then to end the year, we got Natalie Cole and Wayne Rogers. Wayne Rogers, of course, played in the original MASH film as Trapper John, and he was later, when they spun off Trapper John into a series, Wayne Rogers did not participate in that, and instead the role of Trapper John was recast, where the former Big Valley star Pernell Roberts instead played the role. So that kind of covers entertainment for 2015. Looking forward to 2016. Final thing, 2015 here, just business-wise, we attended our first Cauliflower Alley Club, got a brand new client in the Afterglow fan party, and you've heard all of our plugs for that, where former Glow Girl Roxy Astor got, spent her own time to kind of reunite all the Glow Girls that she could possibly find, stuck them all in the same room with a microphone and just had a completely uncensored talk with all of them, with road stories and ribs and everything in front of an audience, and we called it the Afterglow Fan Party. And she's actually looking to take that on the road, or not necessarily on the road per se, but on the sea. She's going to have the Afterglow Fan Party at sea, which is kind of going to be a fun thing. The the Afterglow Fan Party Cruise. It's the Afterglow Fan Party at Sea, and it takes place this summer, right? This summer, let me double check my notes. It takes place with Roxy and Lightning, whom we hope to have as a client. We've been in talks with her. Gremlina, Sunny, the California girl. We hope to have a podcast with her soon. We can't wait to talk to her. Got to get some new content. We haven't really talked to her. Hollywood, MTV, Dallas, Little Egypt, whom we also have Little Egypt and Lightning and Hollywood and MTV. Saw all of them at the Cauliflower Alley Club reunion. Daisy, Jailbait, and announcer Johnny C. As well as some other stuff. There's going to be a lot of cool stuff going on. You can go to afterglowatsea.com and see all the pricing and everything. But the schedule is going to be, between the 21st and the 25th of May. There's actually some greater details. You go to Roxy Astor's Facebook page, ROXYASTOR. You're going to see a lot more details about it. There's also some information on near the top of our page, facebook.com/SFPINC Chicago. For the look back, 2015 saw us acquire possibly some of the biggest collections from people. No longer, kind of handful of things here, handful of things there. We've acquired just a lot of classic Attitude Era tapes. We've got some great overseas stuff. We're in the process of screening for quality there. We've got a lot more magazines that are available, mainstream magazines. We're working on the process of acquiring the video library. What few items are there. The actual rights to the library are held by another, but we're hoping to at least gain a few copies of the finished product from an old promoter we used to work with. We're unveiled, obviously this podcast is brand new, just started this year. And one of the things we hope to do looking into 2016 is honestly continue on the podcast, continue on with getting our biggest catalog ever. And we'd like to be able to acquire the rights to other defunct promotions, whether they be mixed martial arts or pro wrestling. We certainly hope to be able to, again, acquire those rights to say, hey, if you're defunct and you've got the rights to your media, give us all those master tapes and we'll continue to produce them, under our name. We would like, as looking for 2016, we'd like to kind of continue on the goal to be not just distribution, but be production and be able to enter into media production as well, to be able to film and release stuff. That requires a lot of money and a lot of talented personnel. Hopefully we will see that in 2016 to be able to do that, but we're certainly looking forward to the potential for it. Anyway, we've gone just a smidgen under an hour and a half right now, a lot more than I actually expected to be talking about this. But it has been a great year, and I hope that as we approach the witching hour, as it were, as we approach midnight, we approach 2016, I certainly hope that everyone has an incredible new year filled with everything that they can possibly achieve and more. So Happy New Year, everyone, and we will see you in 2016. Thanks so much for being there.